coming up on today's show.
And I'm too afraid that if I let this go, there are going to be some negative ramifications down the line if it turns out I needed this thing.
That you think you might have a use for it, but you never end up using it.
What I want to make sure is we're rooted on what their goals really are for the space that we're working in. Because if it's about living with less, if it's about getting more storage space or finding things more easily, just because something is still good doesn't mean it should have some prime real estate in this space you're trying to reclaim.
Living with less, today on Keeping You Organized. Hello, welcome to Keeping You Organized. Today we are going to talk about how you can live with less. And when I say less, I mean less stuff. And we all know we probably have more stuff than we need, but we need to learn how to deal with that because it's hard for us to give our stuff up. So we're going to bring on a new podcast guest, debut podcast for Kathy Vine's Clever Girl Organizing. And Kathy, welcome to Keeping You Organized.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, great. Let's start with just Clever Girl Organizing. There must be a story behind that name, isn't there? What makes you so clever?
I think clever is probably a word that people have used to describe me in good ways and bad ways my whole life. I remember when I first was looking to start my business, I'm coming up on 5 years at the end of this month, and I was thinking through business names and I wanted something unique, but I didn't want my name. Going through different things, and I was driving in my car, and for some reason, Clever Girl Organizing popped in my head. And it was one of those moments where I said, I have to pull over. I have to write this down. I will forget this, but this is worth remembering.
Yeah.
And I remember calling my mom and saying, what do you think? She said, it's perfect. You're done. That's it.
Great.
And I think there are lots of reasons, everything from I'm kind of focusing on being clever, on getting our ways out of challenges, as well as I was a fan of Jurassic Park growing up, and Clever Girl is a famous line from that movie. So,
I didn't know that because I love that movie,
yes.
But I guess I don't remember that. Okay, well, good. We've got the background on this. We also
yes.
You have a book called The Clever Girl's Guide to Living with Less, right? And
yes.
So that's kind of what we're going to use as a basis for our discussion today. So where do you want to start? How do we motivate people? What are the causes for people living with too much stuff?
Great. I think my book focuses on psychological and emotional barriers, which is a fancy way of saying the stuff that your head tells you and the stuff that your heart tells you, though, when you say, oh, wait, no, I can't possibly part with that. And so I find that they fall into a number of pretty narrow categories. And some of it can be about the future and some of it can be about the past. I'll talk about a few of them just as some examples. The first, I think, is one that we all suffer from a little bit, right? Future fear, which is, I might need this someday. And I'm too afraid that if I let this go, there are going to be some negative ramifications down the line if it turns out I needed this thing.
Yeah. How many times would you like $1 for every time someone said, I think I might need this someday? Or you never know, I might need this, right?
Right, exactly. I might need it. And first of all, I would be the richest person in the world if I could have $1 every time somebody has said that. And sometimes it's true, right? Sometimes you actually might need something someday.
Right.
So it's not that it's just a negative comment and you should dismiss it every time it comes up. But one of the things I do, especially when I'm working with my clients, and around paper is one of the biggest ways where it comes up. Sometimes it comes up with clothing too, like, oh, but what if I have an event and I need to wear this sometime? And the first thing I like to do with them and talk about the word need. So when you say, I might need this someday, is that true? Or have you just created a scenario in your brain in which this thing might be useful? Like, I have a t-shirt with an American flag on it because on 4th of July, sometimes I like to wear a t-shirt with an American flag. Now, I don't need it, but in my mind, well, I should keep this because if 4th of July comes around, I might need to wear this.
Right, you're going to wear it at least once a year, right?
Right, exactly. But I'm overstating the word need as opposed to I've created a scenario in which this thing could apply.
Right.
And so what I try and talk people through saying, all right, so first let's break down need versus want or need versus useful. And then let's talk about how likely is it that that situation occurs, right? We go through a little bit of probability experiment. And then finally, where it gets to a solution is, okay, and if that situation came out and this thing wasn't here, what would you do?
Hmm.
And I want them to talk about two things. One, how would they solve that problem? But two, more importantly, how is it going to make them feel in that moment? Because that's the thing that we're up against, right? Is it's not that they might need it someday, it's that they don't want future them to be aggravated at past them for putting them in a situation where they couldn't be as helpful to solve a problem.
Right. Right. Well, let's talk about maybe a specific client. You don't have to use their name or anything, but what's a good example of some items like that you've actually seen in the field with clients? Now,
Yeah.
I have to admit, I have one of those American flag T-shirts, so we're not going to go down that one. But what are some other kind of example items of things that you've worked with clients on where it's just been this, negotiation, I guess, right?
Sure. One common thing that I bet we can all relate to are chargers. Chargers and the accessories that come with all of our electronics.
Mm.
And first of all, there's a really good chance you cannot even recognize what 50% of them are. And I'm being generous with 50%, right? Well, maybe this is to a camera, or maybe this was to an iPod or a Zune or a Flip It camera, or some of these other technologies that you're not even using the technology anymore. And yet, somehow letting go of the charger feels like you're putting your future self at risk, right?
Hmm.
Well, what if I find this thing and I want to use it and I can't charge it? Okay, right, let's walk through that. So, what would you do? And what is the likelihood you're even going to find the thing and also want to use the thing when it's not part of your life today? So, chargers, extra headphones and earbuds, converters, that whole area that's in people's bins, the electronic bins, it's everything is tangled
Hmm.
up together. And again, most of it's unrecognizable. But I think that's a big area we all struggle with saying, I'm afraid of letting this go because what if I find the thing and it needed to be charged before I could do anything with it?
It is, I think, one of those things, especially with clothes, that you think you might have a use for it, but you never end up using it.
Yeah.
O-
Yes.
Okay, well, let's move. In fact,
Yeah.
we're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, we'll talk about another area. We've kind of covered the fear area, but I know there's more. So we're with Kathy Vines, Clever Girl Organizing, talking about living with less, and we'll be right back. Now there's a place just for you. Life can be busy, and you still have to keep it all together. That's why you like to be organized and in control. Introducing MyOrganized.life, a special place where you can get ideas and solutions to organize what's important to you, your important papers, your important decisions, your important life events. We show you the ideas and products to stay organized in your life. See what's new. Stop by and say hello. Visit us at any time at www.myorganized.life. It's just for you. MyOrganized.life by Smead. Find us at www.myorganized.life. MyOrganized.life. We're back now on Keeping You Organized, talking about living with less stuff, making sure that we can still function, but at a much lower level of material and things that we really don't need in our life. And Kathy Vines, clevergirlorganizing.com. Kathy, before the break, we were talking about fear, but let's move on to maybe another area of why people have so much stuff or keep so much stuff.
Sure. I think another one I work with a lot is something I call purposeless practicality,
Okay.
which in layman's terms is, but this is still good. You're coming across something that you own that you're not using, you don't love, it's not a big part of your life, it's not a part of your foreseeable future, but it still works, or it's still in good shape, or it's something that has some value. And so it's hard to give up, even though it doesn't fit into your current life. And when I'm working with a client on this, what I want to make sure is we're rooted on what their goals really are for the space that we're working in. Because if it's about living with less, if it's about getting more storage space or finding things more easily, just because something is still good doesn't mean it should have some prime real estate in this space you're trying to reclaim. I'll give you an example of I worked with a client who they had a really cluttered storage room, and every time they went to the beach, they'd want to find the cooler, but couldn't really get into the storage room, so they just go out and buy a new cooler, like those hard pack coolers.
Yes.
So the clients, they couldn't get into their storage unit, so they kept having to buy a new cooler every time they wanted one. And then when they finally cleared it out, they had 6 coolers. And somebody might say, oh, that's great. You got 6 coolers. Why don't we get rid of 5? But for them, they really couldn't, because after all, but these are still good coolers. I could use these. I can put them to work. So now they're like maintaining this inventory of perfectly good things that it's hard for them to think about giving away something that is perfectly fine and perfectly usable.
Right.
So I had to reground them in their goals of saying, yep, they're still good. But first of all, you don't need 6. Second, you're in your storage room now, so accessing the 1 or 2 that you do need isn't going to be a challenge anymore.
Right.
But 3, most importantly, your goal was to get a handle on this storage space. And do you really want to give up a whole shelf, really valuable shelf space, for 6 coolers? And once you put it in that perspective of what's the cost of holding on to something that's still good, even if it doesn't have value in your life, that helps bring some letting go clarity.
Right, right. Okay, so we have the practicality. Do you have another area of why people live with more stuff than they really need to live with?
Yeah, I think guilt can be a big one, especially for gifts that we've received or items we've received from somebody that we've lost. When I think about somebody going through gifts, think about the things that you may have received from people you love and love you, and maybe spent good money on it, and money doesn't come easy to them. We seem to hold on to this thing, even if we don't like it, because we don't want to hurt that other person's feelings. We don't want to show disrespect for that person. And so I will often talk to clients about it and say, can you tell me the last time you went out and bought a gift for somebody saying, I hope they hate it. I hope you end up resenting me for it. I hope this really is a burden for you, and it's something that you feel you have to squirrel away in a closet only to bring out and display once a year if I come to visit you. You have never shopped for somebody you cared about that way. So why do you think that person who brought this into your life wants you feeling that way? They wanted you to get joy out of it. Gifts expire. Gifts don't always land great, but the guilt can be so heavy and sticky to that item that if that person who really loved you knew that it burdened you, they would tell you to toss that out the window.
Right. So I'm catching the theme here. There's a lot of psychology that goes this, and I know you're not a psychologist, right? But it's thinking through some of these things really help us to get the right mindset, I guess, right?
Yeah, and I'm not a psychologist. My bachelor's degree was in psychology. I had 20 years in human resources, and 10 of those years I was an executive coach within that role. So I have a lot of experience helping people trying to unlock what's really going on for them. It's not always what they say first is the answer that's really true.
Right.
But that's also really where I feel I'm one of those organizers who would say, it's not about the stuff. 90% of the work that I'm doing with people is kind of talking about the stuff, not actually organizing and what their feelings are and what's tangled up with the stuff.
All right. Well, listen, that's a perfect segue into, because we want to wrap it up here, talking about your business, where you're located, what kinds of services do you offer? I mean, is it just local or virtual, and how people can get a hold of you?
Sure. My business, Clever Girl Organizing, can be found at clevergirlorganizing.com or on Facebook with Clever Girl Organizing, Twitter, Clever Girl Org, and Instagram, Clever Girl Organizing. I do in-person and virtual work. Virtual, I have clients all over the world. In-person is primarily in the north of Boston area. And I'm a speaker and a coach. And I also coach other professional organizers, especially ones who are starting their business. It's been a great way to give back to the industry.
Awesome. Well, Kathy, this is great. I think if people are struggling with thinking they have a little too much, I think a call to you or an email or whatever will probably get the ball rolling in the right direction. So anyway, thank you for your first debut podcast here, and I'm sure we'll have you on again.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. Living with less. You've been... You've gotten 3 great reasons why you probably are keeping too much stuff and how to overcome it. Make sure you check out Kathy's book. CleverGirlOrganizing.com is how you can get a hold of her and find out all the information. And we'll see you next time on Keeping You Organized.